The San Francisco 49ers are entering one of the most quietly transformative offseasons in recent memory, and it's happening not through splashy headlines about superstar players, but through the subtle reshaping of the coaching infrastructure that has powered this franchise's sustained success. When a team built on continuity suddenly experiences staff turnover on both sides of the ball, the ripple effects can reach deep into the locker room, the playbook, and ultimately the identity of the roster itself. This is not just about who is coming and going. It's about how the philosophical DNA of the team could shift heading into a season where expectations remain sky-high. The most immediate shock comes from the departure of Brian Fleury, a coach whose title may not have grabbed national attention, but whose fingerprints were all over the offensive process. Fleury wasn't just the tight ends coach. He was the run-game coordinator, a trusted in-game voice for play-calling discussions, and one of the strategic sounding boards relied upon during the chaos of Sundays. His move to the Seattle Seahawks as offensive coordinator is not simply a promotion for him. It is a direct extraction of institutional knowledge from a division rival that now gains insight into how San Francisco builds its offense week to week. This loss cuts deeper when you consider how the 49ers' rushing attack functions as the engine of everything they do offensively. The run game is not just about yardage totals. It dictates defensive alignments, creates play-action opportunities, and allows the quarterback to operate within a controlled structure. Fleury's role in innovating angles, blocking schemes, and sequencing concepts was evident even in a season where the statistical results did not fully match the creativity on film. The offense experimented with new looks, motion patterns, and gap concepts designed to stay ahead of increasingly sophisticated defensive fronts across the league. Losing the architect behind those tweaks means the 49ers must now decide whether to double down on that evolution or revert to a more familiar blueprint. There is also the uncomfortable reality that Fleury now brings that knowledge directly into the NFC West chess match. Divisional games are often decided by familiarity, by who understands tendencies and adjustments at the most granular level. Seattle hiring someone embedded in San Francisco's weekly planning process gives them a tactical advantage that could show up in critical late-season matchups. Imagine a coordinator who knows how protections were discussed, how run checks were communicated, and what contingency plans existed for specific defensive looks. That is the kind of inside perspective teams rarely get without years of trial and error. At the same time, the 49ers are attempting to reinforce the defensive side with the hiring of Jerry Gray, a veteran defensive backs coach whose resume stretches across decades of NFL history. Gray arrives with experience not only as a positional coach, but also as a defensive coordinator, and his presence signals a desire to stabilize the secondary with a seasoned voice. The reunion with defensive coordinator Raheem Morris adds another layer of familiarity, suggesting the organization values cohesion as it navigates staff turnover elsewhere. Gray's coaching journey, which includes stops with multiple franchises and involvement in a Super Bowl run, brings credibility to a secondary that must contend with the explosive passing attacks dominating today's NFL. Defensive back play is no longer just about coverage technique. It requires communication across hybrid schemes, pattern matching principles, and the ability to disguise intentions until the final second before the snap. A veteran teacher can accelerate the development of younger players while ensuring that the unit operates with the discipline required to support an aggressive front seven. If you're enjoying this deep breakdown of how these moves could reshape the 49ers' future, now is the moment to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because we're going to track every roster decision, coaching change, and strategic adjustment as this offseason unfolds. The defensive additions may not stop with coaching. Draft projections linking the team to interior disruptors like Florida defensive tackle Caleb Banks suggest a renewed emphasis on rebuilding dominance at the line of scrimmage. When the 49ers are at their best, their defensive front collapses pockets without heavy blitzing, allowing the secondary to play aggressively. An infusion of young power inside could restore the kind of pressure that makes life easier for defensive backs and linebackers alike. It also reflects an understanding that championship windows are maintained by constantly replenishing the trenches, not by assuming past success will carry forward. On offense, the questions extend beyond coaching into the composition of the receiving core. The uncertain future surrounding Brandon Ayuk introduces a layer of unpredictability that could force the team to reimagine its passing attack. If a player of that caliber is unavailable, the ripple effect touches route distribution, defensive coverage priorities, and even how opponents defend the run. Discussions about potential replacements, including speed threats who can stretch the field vertically, highlight the possibility of a stylistic shift toward more explosive plays rather than purely methodical drives. This is where the loss of Fleury becomes even more significant. Coaching continuity often acts as the glue during roster transitions. When both are in flux simultaneously, the margin for error narrows. The offensive staff must integrate new voices, adapt to personnel changes, and maintain the precision required for a system built on timing and deception. It is a delicate balancing act that will test the leadership of the entire coaching hierarchy. Meanwhile, the broader context of the NFC landscape cannot be ignored. Rivals are retooling, young quarterbacks are emerging, and defensive coordinators across the conference are studying every tendency on tape. The 49ers are no longer the hunters. They are the standard others are trying to solve. Every offseason decision must be viewed through that lens. Are these moves making the team less predictable, more adaptable, and harder to game plan against in January? The answer will depend on how quickly the new staff pieces integrate and whether the organization can maintain its culture of accountability and innovation. Successful franchises treat turnover as an opportunity rather than a setback. They use fresh perspectives to challenge assumptions and uncover new competitive edges. If the 49ers can do that, this offseason could ultimately strengthen them in ways that are not immediately visible. But there is also risk. Losing trusted voices can disrupt communication channels that took years to build. Small misunderstandings in terminology or philosophy can snowball into execution errors on the field. The early weeks of the season may reveal whether the team has successfully navigated that transition or whether growing pains will be unavoidable. As the offseason continues, every move will feed into a larger narrative about whether this team is evolving or simply reacting to circumstances. The departure of a rising offensive mind to a division rival, the arrival of a seasoned defensive teacher, and the uncertainty surrounding key players create a complex puzzle that will define the next chapter of 49ers football. If you want to stay ahead of that story and understand not just what happens, but why it matters, make sure you subscribe and share this video with fellow fans who crave real analysis, because this offseason could determine whether the 49ers remain contenders or face a period of recalibration.